Here are the tiers. Wanna build? Very fun, fun, kinda fun, not fun. All right, let's get into it. All right, let's get into our Orzhov fun ranking. First up is Amelia Benavides Aguirre? I'm saying that so wrong. 2 mana, 2/2, legendary creature, vampire scout. Ward, pay 3 life. Whenever you gain life, Amelia explores, then destroy all other creatures if its power is exactly 20. Now, this card was just banned in Pioneer and was an absolute menace. However, in Commander, I like an Explore deck. It's white, black, life gain explore, which is like kind of neat. It's probably just really a life gain deck, and then you just happen to explore a whole bunch and then like wipe the board. So I'm gonna put her in, I think I'm gonna put her in kind of fun. I think there are more interesting life gain commanders. I think exploring's fun though. Actually, I'm gonna put her in fun. I think exploring can be a really fun mechanic. It's an interesting way to get card advantage. You could build her as like a life gain reanimator deck where you're using the explorer to put stuff into your graveyard and then reanimating it. So that could be a fun way of doing it. Next up is Aaron Benalia's Rune. This is a 3 mana 3/3 Phyrexian human with menace. You can pay a white and a black tap, sack another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. It's a pretty standard commander, I think. Nothing like too fancy here. Just sacrifice stuff. I'm gonna put them, I think, in kind of fun. There are better sack commanders, like more interesting ones. I think it could be fun, but it's something that I'm just like very meh on. If I see it, I'm not gonna be like, wow, it's boring, but I'm not gonna run out and like build it. Next is Arvad the Cursed. 5 mana 3/3 Vampire Knight, Death Touch Lifelink. Other legendary creatures you control get +2/+2. So, Legendary Matters commander, nothing super fancy here, pretty straightforward. For that, I'm gonna put that in kind of fun. I don't think that's not fun. I love Legendary Matters decks, and there's some other really fun ones on this list, but I think it's just a fine commander. The legendary theme is kind of carrying it into kind of fun. I could be convinced to put it into not fun, but that's just me. Next is Aurelia, Knight of Windgrace. 4 mana 4/4 human knight with vigilance. 2 and a white tap, make a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. Black tap, X, untap knight you control. Destroy target creature with power X or less. So I actually opened this at rare. I think it was at rare in the original Dominaria United. Was it Dominaria? No, not Dominaria United. Just Dominaria from like years ago. So that was fun. But as like a knight commander, I think I almost want to put this in not fun, but I feel like that's a little too mean. I'm gonna put them in kind of fun. I think the tapping is gonna be cool. Maybe if you have some ways of untapping creatures and you can abuse it, but there's no intruder alarm in Orzhov, so I'm gonna put them in kind of fun. Next is Asterion the Decadent. 6 mana 4/4 Vampire Elf Rogue with Death Touch and Lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, choose one. Feed. Target opponent loses life equal to the amount of life they lost this turn. Or friends, you gain life equal to the amount of life you gain this turn. This seems like a pretty fun commander. I like Baldur's Gate a lot. The game was really good. Asterion was really fun. So I'm gonna put this in very fun, I think. I like the idea of just like draining out opponents or gaining a whole bunch of life. Could also be really fun in like a... Next up is Astarion the Decadent. It's a 6 mana 4/4 Vampire Elf Rogue with Death Touch and Lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, choose one. Feed. Target opponent loses life equal to the amount of life they lost this turn. Or friends, you gain life equal to the amount of life you gain this turn. Now, I think this is actually going to be a very fun commander. They're from Baldur's Gate 3. I love that game. I love the set. I think Commander Legends is Commander Legends is actually a really good set. So I'm going to throw them into very fun. They also could be really fun in a two-headed giant commander game, or maybe like Arch Enemy, where you're just trying to gain a bunch of life and like outlive the rest of the table. I don't know, I think it could be cool. Next up is Athreos, God of Passage. 3 mana 5/4 God. Indestructible, as long as your devotion to white and black is less than 7. Athreos isn't a creature. Whenever another creature you own dies, return it to your hand unless target opponent pays 3 life. Now, Athreos is actually, I think is going to be a fun commander. There's some interesting builds. I know people really like the Shadowborn Apostle builds from Command Zone or Game Nights, but I think just it's a fun sack commander that you can be very political with, where you just have someone who has low life kind of force you to get something back, or people just kind of pay it. I don't know. I think there are fun builds with it, so I'm going to put them in fun. Next up is Athreos the Shroud Veiled. This is a 6 mana 4/7 God, indestructible. Again, devotions to black and white are less than 7, not a creature. At the beginning of your end step, you put a coin counter on another target creature. Whenever a creature with a coin counter on it dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. Now, this is a very fun commander. You gotta kind of steal stuff. It's only at the beginning of your end step, so you can't give a bunch of things coin counters. If you proliferate them and use resourceful defense on your own things, maybe you can try to like move them around or like with nesting ground. But I think that's a little too cute. But honestly, I'm gonna put this Athreos into very fun. I like stealing people's creatures. Next up is Aelia, Eternal Pilgrim. 2 mana, 2/3 core cleric with Death Touch. 1, sack another creature. You gain life equal to the sacrifice creature's toughness. Then 1 black and a white, sack another creature. Exile target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only if you have at least 10 more life than your starting life. So this was one of the few commanders for a long time that could be companioned with Lurrus, so that's kind of cute. But as a sack commander, I think they're just going to go into the kind of fun category. I don't think they're anything special. They're a sack commander. You can gain a whole bunch of life with them, but that's it. I'm not too interested in this as in my commander. 99 though, I'm in. Next up is Baron Bertram Greywater. 4 mana, 3/4 Vampire Noble. Whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, make a 1/1 black Vampire Rogue creature token with lifelink. This ability only triggers once each turn. And then 1 and a black, sack another creature or artifact, draw a card. So it's a token matters commander. It's probably, I'm gonna put this I think in kind of fun. I don't have like super high hope for this commander. The once per turn clause is kind of what's holding me back a little bit more on it, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but I don't know. It's, I think, just fine. Next up is Borrowin of Clan Under. 4 mana, 3/3 Dwarf Cleric. When it enters, venture into the dungeon. So this isn't the initiative, this is the original dungeon from AFR. And then whenever it attacks, return up to 1 creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield if you completed a dungeon. So I think this could actually be a very fun commander. I'll put it above below Athreos rather. I think with the initiative being introduced, I think you could actually make this really fun. I like the initiative, I like trying to hold it. And it's an attack trigger, not a combat damage trigger, which means you can use one of my favorite cards, Maze of Ith. You just take it out of combat and get cards like, I'm trying to think of a 3 mana creature that I really like in white, but Resplendent Angel, or something along those lines, right? Like cheap creatures like Spirited Companion that you can then Skull Clamp and bring it back. There are a lot of really cool things you can do. Next up is Bartolomeu de Presidio. 2 mana, 2/1 Vampire Knight. Stack another creature or artifact, put a counter on him. This is fine. I think in my Lost Caverns video, I probably put him in kind of fun. I think I'm going to put him there now. It's a sack commander that gets bigger, so if you want to do Voltron or cute counter things, you can, but I'm not really interested in doing that. Next up is Brina the Demagogue. 3 mana, 1/3 Bird Warlock with flying. Whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, if that opponent has more life than another one of your opponents, that attacking player draws a card, and you put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. This commander is actually super fun. I'm very fun, right? It gives a lot of, it shares a lot of like card advantage with people, so like people get to play the game, you put counters on your own stuff, and then it also incentivizes people to attack around the table instead of just attacking you or attacking a single person. The biggest issue I have with it is the rules can be a little complicated with it if there's like multiple things going on with it. Like I've seen some weird, or if someone will like make a copy of it and then attack with 2 copies. I've seen just like some weird things with it, but I'm still going to put this in very fun. Next up is Brimaz, Blight of Araska. 4 mana, 3/4 Phyrexian Cat. Whenever you cast a Phyrexian creature or artifact spell, incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. At the beginning of each end step, if a Phyrexian died under your control this turn, proliferate. This was the face commander for one of the pre-cons from March of the Machines, and it's pretty fun. One of my buddies actually has the deck, so I think I'm going to put Brimaz in the top of fun here. I think you could maybe have an argument for it being a very fun commander, but I'm just going to put it in fun for now because I think Kindred decks aren't always the most fun to play. They're usually pretty linear. Next up is Carmen Cruel Sky Marcher. 5 mana, 2/2 Vampire Soldier with flying. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature and gain a life. Whenever Carmen attacks, return up to 1 target permanent card with mana value less than or equal to Carmen's power from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's a Vampire Matters commander. Actually, it's not even a Vampire Matters commander. If you have a play group that has a lot of fetches in it, so against one of my particular decks, this would be an absolute powerhouse because I have all my fetches in just one deck. If you're playing against another sacrifice deck, and you don't have to build this as a vampire commander, it's just a Orzhov Reanimator commander. And honestly, I'm kind of here for that. I'm going to put that in fun. I think it's more fun than Amelia and more fun than original Athreos. So I'm going to put it right next to Brimaz. Now, next up is Clavino, First of the Blessed. 3 mana, 2/2 Vampire Cleric. Whenever you attack, target attacking vampire that isn't a demon becomes a demon in addition to other types. It gains when this creature dies, draw a card, and create a tapped 4/3 white and black vampire demon creature token with flying. So one of my friends actually has this not quite this pre-con, it's an upgraded version of it. But this commander's actually pretty fun. I still don't think it's very fun. I still think it's a Kindred commander, so I'm still going to put it in fun. But it's cool seeing like Blood Artists become 4/3 demons and then reanimating the Blood Artist. I don't know, I just kind of enjoy that. So I'm going to definitely put this in the fun category. Next up is Colonel Autumn. 3 mana, 2/3 Human Soldier, lifelink exploit. Other legendary creatures you control have exploit. Whenever a creature you control exploits a creature, whenever a creature you control exploits a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So it's saying whenever a creature exploits another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature. Okay, my brain turned off there for a minute. See, this seems like a fun legendary matters commander. I'm gonna put that. I don't know if I want to put this in wanna build or very fun. I like exploit. I'm gonna put this in wanna build. I went over all the Fallout commanders and I don't even remember seeing this one because just there have been so many cards released since then. But I think that could be a fun commander. I might pick one up for my one of my Orzhov Legends decks, which we'll sketch you later in this video. Next up is Commissaire Severina Rain. Close enough. It's a 3-mana 2/2 human soldier. Whenever they attack, each opponent loses X life or X number of other attacking creatures. Sure, you may pay 2, sack another creature, gain 2 life, and draw a card. So you want to go wide and then attack with this, and then each opponent loses a whole bunch of life. Seems fine. I'm gonna put this. I think this is a fun commander. I would love to give this like not a commander's plate. What's the equipment? I can't think of it. Where you pass the commander around? That could be funny. But I guess they make you lose life. And then you're an opponent. Maybe not. Maybe don't do that. Next up is Daxos the Returned. 3-mana 2/2 zombie soldier. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you get an experience counter. And you can pay 1 a black and a white, put a black and white spirit enchantment creature token onto the battlefield. It has this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of experience counters you have. So it's a enchantment matters commander, you get experience counters, and then you make a bunch of big creatures. So you really don't need any other creatures in the deck. You want them though, like Doomwake Giant and stuff. But you make your own creatures, and then as you play more enchantments, they get bigger. It is cast an enchantment spell, which I think is just weaker than stuff like is it one whose name I can't remember, Marin and Azuri? Because I think Azuri isn't cast, I think Azuri is enters. I'd have to look though. So I think this is the weaker of the bunch, but I still think it's a fun commander. So I'm definitely gonna put this in fun. Next up is Denethor, Ruling Steward. Ruling Steward? That was tough for me. 3-mana, 2/4 human noble. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, make a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. 2, sack another creature. Each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. This is just a pretty generic commander. I'm not that interested in this. You get 1/1/1 at the beginning of only your end step. This might be the first not fun commander. I know I put others that are probably a little less fun than this, but I personally, you might think are like less fun than this guy, but I think honestly, that's just not a fun commander. I don't know. Just not into it. Next up is Drana and Lavinia. This is a 4-mana 3/4 vampire angel, flying vigilance. Activated abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be activated, and they have all activated abilities of all creatures your opponents control. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to activate these abilities. This is actually a pretty fun commander, well, for if you like torturing your friends. So I think I'm going to put them at the tail end of fun, just because of the hate you'll probably get for playing them. However, I think as a commander, I enjoy it. I like taking people's abilities. And it's not like they can't be removed pretty easily. They have no protection. They're just a 3/4 flying vigilant. So there might be situations where you have ETBs and like triggered abilities, which you don't care about because you don't lose those with this commander. And someone might have an activated ability of a commander that you're like, oh, well, we'll just protect Drana ourselves so we don't have to deal with it. Next up is Ellis Ilkor, Sadistic Pilgrim. 2-mana 2/2 Death Touch. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, gain a life. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. An Aristocrat's commander, sort of like a legendary Suture Priest. Not quite, because it's when you die, not when a creature your opponent controls enters. However, I still think it is a fun commander, so we're gonna put that, I think, like here. Next up is Edgar Charmed Groom. This is a 4-mana 4/4 vampire noble. Other vampires you control get +1/+1, and when he dies, return to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. It becomes Edgar Markov's Coffin. It's a legendary artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, make a 1/1 black and white vampire creature token with flying, or with lifelink, not flying, and put a bloodline counter on the coffin. Then if there are 3 or more bloodline counters on it, remove those counters and transform it, and then you end up flipping it back into Edgar. So this is just a vampire commander. It's a little more interesting since you get that coffin on the back, so when it dies, you can kind of just like leave it as a coffin. But I don't know if I'm that interested in this. I think it's I'm gonna put it under fun just because how kind of unique it is. You saw nothing. So into fun it goes. Next up is Elder Arthur Maxon. 3-mana 4/2 human knight. Creature tokens you control have training. So whenever a creature token you control attacks with another creature with greater power, put a +1/+1 counter on that token. And then it has Blind Betrayal. Sacrifice another creature. Elder Arthmaxon gains indestructible until end of turn. So you want to, it's a go white token deck, and then each token gets stronger. So as long as you have a way of making tokens not be like a 1/1 and a 2/2, you have to like stagger them so you can keep getting training buffs on them, or just make a bunch of 1/1s and have like 1/2/2. So I think there are plenty of ways to do this. I'm gonna put them in, I think, fun. That sounds like a fun commander. I think definitely here. A lot of Orzhov token shenanigans, which shouldn't be surprising. Next up is Elenda the Dusk Rose, 4 mana 1/1 vampire knight with lifelink. Whenever another creature dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on Elenda, and then whenever Elenda dies, you make X 1/1 vampire creature tokens with lifelink, or X is Elenda's power. So interesting history about this commander, if you don't know, because I think there's a lot of new players to Commander that don't realize some of the weird history and things we used to have to do to work around certain effects. But a dies trigger like this, it used to not count. Like when your commander died, you have to put it in the graveyard in order for it to actually trigger have a death trigger happen. So Elenda for a long time wasn't seen as a good commander because you couldn't actually kill it without putting it into your graveyard. So you'd have to build in ways to get it out of your graveyard later on. And then they replaced it and they changed the rules, so now it's fine. So now with that new rules change, I definitely think they're a very fun commander. I know I said Kindred decks can be kind of boring, but I don't think Elenda is a true Kindred deck. I think it's an Aristocrats deck that you happen to get a bunch of 1/1 vampires. So yeah, I really like this commander. Next up is Ariette of the Charmed Apple, 3 mana 2/4 human warlock. Each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalker you control. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of auras you control. See, this is a commander I do want to build. We have one in our friend group, so I'm not currently, but that's okay. I kind of like seeing their deck kind of pop off. The idea I have for mine is I actually kind of want to do Super Friends because they can't attack planeswalkers you control. And I feel like there has to be some Orzhov planeswalkers that enchant creatures. I feel like there has to be at least one. Maybe not. I'll look into that later. But yeah, they're in the wanna build category for sure. Next up is Felisa, Fang of Silverquill. It's a 4 mana 3/2 vampire wizard with flying and mentor. Whenever this creature attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature with lesser power. Oh my god, I just flubbed through that. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, if it had counters on it, you create X tapped 2/1 white and black inkling creature tokens with flying, where X the number of counters it had on it. So I think this was in the Strixhaven Commander decks originally, and it's now in one of the Commander Legend decks. I'm pretty sure this was in one of the precons. So I don't ever remember seeing this commander. I don't remember this commander at all. However, seeing it, that seems really fun because you get to put together like +1/+1 counter stuff and then an Aristocrats deck, and then you make 2/1 flying tokens, which are really good. They come in tapped, which is like sucks, but I feel it tampers the power level of the deck a little bit. But I mean, you can sacrifice it, so it doesn't really matter. Like you can do it at the end step of someone else's turn, so then you can get the most value out of it. I kind of want to put this. I think I'm going to put this in Wanna Build. I think I might want to build that commander actually as an Orzhov commander, or at least pick a copy up for one of my decks. Next up is Freya, Judge of Valor, 5 mana 2/4 Angel Cleric, flying lifelink. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one into your hand, the rest into your graveyard. Now, this is a cool commander. So you can build this as Reanimator. I've seen people try to do like Orzhov Spellslinger with it. The card selection you get is insane, right? Because you can get potentially 12 cards a turn. Look at 12 a turn, 3 on your turn, 3 on each opponent's turns. If you're in a bigger game, you can get even more. And you put them into your graveyard, which is another hand, especially if you can build your deck around it. I'm going to put this in very fun. I think it's a unique effect in Orzhov. I think you have to really work to get there, and I think those are some of the most fun commanders, are the ones you really have to work at to like make work. I said work a lot. You get the idea. Next up is Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit, 2 mana 1/3 legendary creature, halfling scout. It has partner with Sam Loyal Attendant. I'm not covering partners here, just not like the full partner pairs. I'll be doing that when I get into the 3-color video maybe. So whenever Frodo attacks, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, the ring tempts you. Then if Frodo is your ring bearer and the ring has tempted you 2 or more times this game, you draw a card. So it's Orzhov life gain and you ring tempting deck. And honestly, I think even without Sam as the partner, this could be a pretty fun like life gain commander. I'm gonna put this, it reminds me a little bit of Amelia, so I'm gonna put him right behind Amelia here. Next up is Frodo, Sauron's Bane. It's a 1 mana 1/2 halfling citizen. You can pay 2 Orzhov hybrids, so white, white, or black. If Frodo is a citizen, it becomes a halfling scout with base power and toughness 2/3 and lifelink. Then you can pay 3 black. If Frodo is a scout, it becomes a halfling rogue with whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game if the ring has tempted you 4 more times this game. Otherwise, the ring tempts you. So you can just one-shot people with this, especially if you build your deck around it. That's pretty powerful. This is essentially a 6-mana commander, because it's 1 to play it, and then 2, but you can pay that over the course of 3 turns. So play this on 1, buff it on 2, buff it on 3. The triple black is actually pretty tough to do, so I think it's unlikely you can get this on turn 3 as that third ability. You would have to have 3 different dual lands that all come to play untapped in Orzhov. On a budget, that's going to be a little bit trickier, but not impossible. I'm gonna put them, I think, in very fun. I think you have to kind of work to get it. I'm not a huge fan of one-shotting players though, but I think this ability takes so much work. If this happens to you, something went horribly wrong in the game. So yeah, we're gonna put him in very fun. Next up is General Kudro of Draneth. 3 mana, 3/3 human soldier. Other humans you control get +1/+1. And whenever General Kudo or another human enters the battlefield, exile target creature card. Exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. Okay, 2 sack 2 humans, destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. This is I don't know if I want to put this in not fun. I don't think it's not fun, but I'm gonna put it in the kind of fun category. It's a human lord that you can destroy creatures and exile graveyard. I don't know why you'd want to play this as a commander. I think even in Orzhov, there are more interesting human commanders than this. I don't know. Yeah, this is just like fine. Next up is Ghost Council of Orzhov. So it's a 4 mana 4/4 spirit. When it enters, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. You can pay 1, sack a creature, exile Ghost Council, return to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So it's a very slow drain, right? You can only target 1 opponent, and you have to pay a life and sack a creature. It's a lot of things to kind of do to get this to work, and I don't think the payoff is really worth it in my opinion. So I'm gonna put them in the kind of fun category. I'm sure people have some really cool builds with this, but it seems like it's just a little bit too much work for me to really enjoy playing this. Next up is Greasefang Okiba Boss, 3 mana 4/3 rat pilot. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return target vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So this card was a menace and pioneer for a little bit. I played mono blue spirits, so it never really was an issue for me, but one of my buddies actually has a deck with this commander, and while it's not the most powerful, it is an incredibly fun commander to play with and against, so I'm actually going to put them into very fun, because it's a weird, like, reanimator deck that wants to just play vehicles, which are kind of cool, and then you get them back into your hand. I don't know, I really just enjoy this, like, play pattern in commander in particular. Next up is Jarina Dauntless General, 2 mana 2/2 human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, exile target player's graveyard, sacrifice it, humans you control gain Hexproof and Indestructible until end of turn. Is this the daughter of the other general? Either way, this card is going straight into kind of fun. Yeah, they almost look similar. I'm assuming that's the daughter of the other guy. And as such, they can be together in the kind of fun tier. Next up is Campbell, Consul of Allocation, 3 mana 2/3 human advisor. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. This is a pretty brutal commander, and honestly, I think it's kind of fun. Not kind of fun, I think it is a fun commander. I'm gonna put it like right in the middle of fun, definitely above here. That might be a weird take, but it speeds up the game, which I think is great, and it's a tax that doesn't prevent people from playing the game, and it's not so detrimental that it like slows the game to a crawl with something like Nadu where you try to remove it and you can resolve a whole bunch of things. I think this is a good way of taxing in commander in particular, is just having people lose life because they have so much of it. So it's not as impactful, but I think it helps speed up the game in a meaningful way, especially depending on what decks you have at your table. Next up is Campbell Profiteering Mare, 3 mana 2/4 human advisor. Whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your opponent's control, for each of them you make a copy of it. This ability only triggers once each turn, and then whenever 1 or more tokens enter under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So if someone plays like a dockside, you also get a whole bunch of treasures, which is sick. So if someone's making a lot of tokens in one shot, you get copies of all of those. So a kicked right of replication with this is just kind of gross for you. However, the second ability is whenever 1 or more enter. So if you make 5 tokens, you only get 1 trigger, but there are cards like Smothering Tithe, and there's the white card from the LCI precons, I think, that you make a 1/1 and then you ascend. It's not Tender True Dread, but the white version of that, so you can drain the table each turn. Honestly, I think this is actually a fun commander. This might be very fun for me. I'm gonna put this in very fun. I like token decks. I like how this works. I think it's cool that you can punish people for playing other token commanders, especially if you're making a lot of things, like an Ink Shield, for example. Like, you get a whole bunch of things. I don't know. I think it's just cool. Next up is Karlov of the Ghost Council. 2 mana, 2/2 Spirit Advisor. Whenever you gain life, put 2 counters on this creature, pay a black and a white. Black and a white, remove 6 blood counters from it, exile target creature. 6+1/+1 counters, so you can't put other counters. But so this was the other commander you could partner with Luris. I think it was only this and the other one I mentioned at the beginning that could partner with Luris when Luris was first released. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think so. I think it was just 2 of them. It's a life gain commander that then lets you just exile creatures. There's no keywords on this thing. It just kind of gets big, and then it's removal. So I'm gonna put this in, I think, kind of fun. I think because you can partner it with Luris, I think it makes it a little bit more interesting, but I don't know. Yeah, I think it's just gonna go right into the kind of fun tier. Next up is Killin Ink Duelist. 2 mana, 2/2 Human Warlock, Lifelink Menace. Spells you cast at targeted creature cost 2 less to cast. Another Luris companion. This came out after, though. Ikoria came out after Strixhaven. And this card seems like if you want to build combat tricks.deck, where Auras or Voltron has Menace and Lifelink, which are good stats. Normally, I would rate this commander kind of low, where I'm like, oh, it doesn't really do much. But the fact that spells that target creatures cost less, it's not creatures you control, it's any spell. So removal, blinks. I think I'm gonna put this in very fun. Just from looking at it, I feel like it could be a very fun commander. There are a bunch of different ways you can build it, which is neat, and Menace and Lifelink are 2 powerful keywords that I really like seeing on Orzhov creatures. Or just creatures in general, honestly. Next up is King of the Oathbreakers. 4 mana, 3/3 Spirit Noble with flying. Whenever it or another spirit you control becomes a target of a spell, it phases out. Whenever it or another spirit you control phases in, create a tapped 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So the biggest issue I have with this commander is you just target it, and it phases out, and then none of your other spirits will phase out, and they have to be targeted. So it is almost impossible to remove without like a board wipe, and you can't really blink them, and it has to be a spell, but there are definitely things you can do to get spells back, things with like buyback, or spells that target multiple creatures. I don't know where I put this in my original Lord of the Rings fun ranking. I don't remember if I did one actually. I don't know if I did. I don't know, but we're gonna put this under, I think, very fun. That might be weird. I think it's just a more interesting spirit commander, and like you want to find ways to target your spirits with multiple spirits with 1 spell. Next up is Kunaros, Hound of Athreos. 3 mana, 3/3 Hound. Vigilance, Menace, Lifelink. Creature cards in graveyards can enter the battlefield. Players can't cast spells from graveyards. If you have an awful graveyard deck at your table, I guess you can play this. Otherwise, this is going right into the maybe not fun. I don't think it's a fun commander. No, that's not true. I think kind of fun. The thing carrying it is Vigilance, Menace, and Lifelink are really good keywords on a 3/3. So I'm going to put it for that reason, but if it didn't have any other keywords, it would definitely be not fun. Next up is Lisa Forgotten Archangel. 5 mana, 5/4 Angel with flying and lifelink, no vigilance. Don't know why I said that. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. If a creature an opponent controls would die, you exile it instead. It's a sack commander. It also exiles people's creatures. It's flying lifelink, which are great. No built-in protection though. It's just another sack commander that returns you stuff. It's like Athreos if Athreos didn't make you pay life, so I'm gonna put it above Athreos. Next up is Lisa Shroud of Dusk. It's a 5 mana 5/5 angel. Rather than pay 2 generic for each previous time you've cast a spell from the command zone this game, you may pay 2 life that many times. So it replaces the commander tax with you paying 2 life. Flying and lifelink, and whenever player casts a spell, they lose 2 life, including you. However, you get to cheat on the commander tax, which could be cool with cards like Skullstorm and the White Storm that care about how many times you've cast your commander from the command zone. Hopefully we get more cards like that, because that could be kind of cool. But I think this is like one of those taxing commanders. I think it's gonna go with Campbell. It also taxes, I didn't show the ranking, so I'm gonna pretend like we just did that. I'm gonna put it right next to Campbell. I think the fact that it speeds up the game is great, and actually I'm gonna put a little above Campbell here. The fact that it also affects you, while definitely a downside, I think makes it a little bit more interesting because you got to find a way to work around that. It has lifelink, so that makes it like pretty easy. Yeah, so I think I'm just gonna put it right in the fun tier. Next up is Lotho Corrupt Sheriff. 2 mana 2/1 halfling rogue. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose 1 life and create a treasure token. Seems like a fine commander. It's great in like CEDH. I mean, it's probably great in regular commander too. So I'm gonna put that. It's another like taxing commander. So I think I'm going to put it with Campbell here, because you lose a life and you make a treasure token, so it's not quite the same tax as like an opponent getting hurt, but you're getting value. and treasure tokens are great, so you can potentially get like 4 extra mana turn cycle depending if people are double spelling. Next up is Lurrus of the Dream Den. 3 mana 3/2 Cat Nightmare. So it has Companion, so each permanent card in your starting deck has converted mana cost 2 or less, and if it does, you have to pay. This is the old text, so if you don't know, Companions used to say you can just cast them for their cost outside of the game. They have been errated since to say pay 3 generic mana at sorcery speed to put them into your hand, and then you can cast them. Even with that nerf, Lurrus and like Yarion were still absolute menaces to the game. Has lifelink, and then during each of your turns, you may cast 1 permanent spell with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard. So you have to cast it, which means you can't play lands, but it is any permanent, and that's cool. I'm gonna put Lurrus in, I think, in the top of Kinda Fun. I like it as a companion in commander decks more than I like it as its own commander. Oh, I never noticed that little cub behind it. That's so cute. It's still going Kinda Fun. Next up is McCready Lamplight Mare. 2 mana, 1/3 Human Advisor. We have so many Lurrus companions now. Whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less attacks, it gains Skulk until end of turn. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater attacks, its controller loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Attacks you. So you want cheap creatures. See, this could be really fun with Lurrus. So I'm gonna put this in maybe very fun. You get to attack with like cheap creatures and gain Skulk, so you can't be blocked by a creature with power greater. And you could try to do like an Orzhov ninja, like a bunch of the, if there's any mono black ninjas, I mean there are, that would be pretty cool. And whenever you're attacked with a big creature, you gain life. So if like a 4 power creature attacks you, it's really only attacking you for 2. And if you have ways of augmenting the life gain, then you're really getting hit for like nothing. That's, I don't know, that's a cool card. Maybe I want to put that in Wanna Build. Hold on, I'm thinking about that. I'm going to put it in Wanna Build, actually. I think I might look into these. There's some cool commanders I've missed with how many have just come out, and I got to look at them with a fresh set of eyes. That could be a whole video. That might be an end of the year video. Anyways, let's get back on track here. And next up is Minthara, Merciless Soul. 4 mana, 2/2 Elf Cleric. That is Ward X, or X the number of experience counters you have. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, you get an experience counter. Creatures you control get +1/+0 for each experience counter you have. So you can build this off Blink, or it doesn't matter how they left, just so long as a permanent left the battlefield this turn and you controlled it. Also, sacrificing lands. So you could play like Zern Orb Crucible in an Orzhov deck, sack a land, get it back. A lot of different things you can do. My buddy built a pitch deck with this actually, which is pretty sick. As a regular commander though, I do think it is, I think that I put it in fun. That might be weird. I love the Baldur's Gate set. I think it is a really good set that is really like unexplored. So yeah, it's gonna go there. Next up is Moira and Teshar. 5 mana, 4/5 Phyrexian Spirit Bird. My boy Teshar. Flying. Whenever you cast a historic spell, return target non-land permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. If it would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. So a cute thing you can do, which you could also do with like Unearth or any effect like this, is if you blink it, you exile it anyways. So it would just come back and then completely ignore that last line of text because it is leaving the battlefield and going into exile, which the blink spell already is doing. So I think it would work how we want, just like Unearth. I'm 99% sure. So if you want to build a legendaries like blink deck, you could absolutely do that. I'm gonna put this commander in very fun. Again, I think this is another commander that I just absolutely missed when working, like making videos. I'm sure I've looked at it, was like cool, but so many commanders have come out in the last number of years. It's so much to keep track of. So this is a really cool commander. If you have a deck list for this, I would love to see it. Next up is Nalia Dernice. Nailed it. 3 mana, 3/3 Human Rogue. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast Cleric, Rogue, Warrior, and Wizard spells from the top of your library, so cards from a party. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you have a full party, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain Death Touch until end of turn. I actually have this pre-con. I like the other commanders better, the background stuff. Not in this video though. As a commander, as its own commander though, I actually, looking back at this card, I think it's actually really sick. I was really low on it originally, but I think, honestly, I think it goes in fun. I think it deserves... I did the thing again. I'm trying a new thing with how I record these, so I'm going to put this in fun tier. I like casting stuff from the top of your library. I like that it's a party deck. I think in the past 2 years, we've gotten so many more rogues and warriors. Actually, let's do something I've never done before. Let's do a Scryfall search. So, warrior, rogue, cleric, wizard, allow partial type matches, commander, and then if we go up here, I think we can do, is that gonna work? Nope. So released greater than the year 2022. So we have 220 and is first printing. So since 2023, we've had 100 new clerics, rogues, warriors, and wizards release that are their first printings. So yeah, we have a ton of new material for this thing. I don't normally do that in video, but let's leave it in. All right, next up is Naomi, Pillar of Order. 5 mana, 4/4 human advisor. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, if you control an artifact and an enchantment, create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. Sure, I don't know. I guess kind of fun. Seems like a little too hard to do, and you have to attack with it or blink it, and you get like a 2/2. It's also 5 mana for this commander. I'm not that interested. Maybe in PDH is cool. It might be really good in H, but in its own commander set, nah. Or own commander deck, rather. Next up is Neva, Stalked by Nightmares. It's a 4 mana 2/2 human noble with menace. When it enters, return target creature card or enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. Whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a counter, +1/+1 counter on Neva, then scry. Scry 1. This is a fine commander. It's not an enchantment itself, which is unfortunate, which would be cool because if it enters, you could in theory like enters, its abilities on the stack, sacrifice it, and then return it to your hand. However, I think this is going to go into I don't know if it's not fun. It's not fun. It's more fun than some of these commanders for sure. I'll put it like here in the kind of fun tier. Next up is Niam Shamarid, 4 mana 3/3 human rogue. Whenever they deal combat damage to a player, you may have that player return target permanent card from their graveyard to their hand. If you do, that player chooses a permanent card in your graveyard, then you put it onto the battlefield under your control. So you could have a player return a permanent card from their graveyard to their hand, and then they pick a permanent card in your graveyard to put onto the battlefield. So if we think about this, what's the worst that it can do? The worst that it'll do is give you a land, but they get a return. You pick the permanent that goes back into their hand. So you can give them a land back and then you get a ramp a land. There are no keywords though. You have to suit this up because it has literally no evasion, no trample, no skull, nothing. So for that reason, I think I'm gonna put that in kind. No, I think it does belong in fun. I think just the tail end of fun. Next up is Obsidian Ghost Council. This is a 5 mana 5/5 Spirit Advisor. When it enters, when this card enters, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile them. If you do, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. At the beginning of your next upkeep, it gains haste. Weird. So you just blink it every turn, and you just keep draining people for 2 life at 5 mana, and people have to remove it at instant speed. Otherwise, it just comes back. And it has haste. What a weird card. I'm gonna put this in... I don't know where I want to put this card. Is it fun? It's weird. I'm gonna put it at the tail end of fun just because it's kind of unique. I don't know. I feel like if I saw this at a table as a commander, I'd get a chuckle out of it for sure. And I definitely enjoy like playing against it. Next up is Aura Skyclave Hierophant. 4 mana 3/3 core cleric with lifelink. When it or another cleric you control dies, return target cleric card with lesser mana value from your graveyard to the battlefield. So this is definitely a solidly fun commander. I almost want to put it in very fun because cleric isn't a creature type that we have a lot of kindred support for, but I think I'm going to put it in a higher... I think it's above Phyrexians for me. I think there are a lot of like cleric cards that are really cool that I think this being like a kindred commander for is neat. Next up is Ratadrabik of Urborg. 4 mana 3/3 zombie wizard, has vigilance ward 2. Other zombies you control have vigilance, which I often forget that it has that line of text. Whenever another legendary creature you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and it's a 2/2 black zombie in addition to its other types and colors. So I actually have this commander, spoiler alert. So this is going right into wanna build because I kind of own it already. I wonder if I shouldn't make a category that says already have, so people know that I already like built this commander, but this is such a fun commander. My deck can get a little chaotic because I have Mondrak, Drivnod, Teysa, and Blade of Selves in it. So there have been times where like you'll sack a creature, sack 1 legendary, and get like 16 copies of it, which is real fun with like Kokusho. This deck could be very complicated in terms of just if you build it in a certain way, like crazy triggers. But overall, I really enjoy this commander. It's definitely, if you get interacted with a lot, it definitely doesn't function as well as you'd like because it's a 4 mana do nothing commander. You need other legends in play and you have to have stuff to sacrifice them. However, I think that's definitely worth it. One thing I've thought about doing with this deck is just having a pile of Orzhov legends and I just shuffle them in each game. Another thing that I highly suggest you do if you want to build this is print out copies of, even if it's just on like printer paper, of all the legends you have and just have those on hand as your token copies of them, because you can have the token copy and the original in play at the same time, and it can be very hard if you need to like reference text if you have one in the graveyard, you're constantly pulling it out, or if you have it on the field to represent the token, you might forget it's in your graveyard and then reanimate. So just like print out token copies of them. Next up is Ravos Soul Tender. It's a 5 mana 2/2 human cleric, flying. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. It has partner. Again, we're looking at it as a single commander, and by itself, I think it's just a kind of fun commander. I'm even tempted to put it into not fun, but I like returning things to my hand, so I think it's more fun than a lot of these up here. So I'm definitely gonna put it in kind of fun. Yeah, it's gonna go in kind of fun for me. I don't know. I think it's just a pretty boring commander. Next up is Rhea Ivor, Bane of Bladehold. It's a 4 mana 3/4 Phyrexian Knight with Battle Cry. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. At the beginning of combat on your turn, the next time target creature would deal combat damage to one or more players. Prevent this combat damage. Oh my god, sorry. Let me try that one more time. It is such an early morning. At the beginning of combat on your turn, the next time target creature would deal combat damage to one or more players this combat, prevent that damage. If damage is prevented this way, create that many 1/1 Phyrexian Might artifact creature tokens with Toxic 1 and this creature can't block. Okay, so you can crack in with a bunch of creatures and then say, no, I want a bunch of mites. That seems fun. Don't know why that seems fun, but that seems fun to me. So you have to deal combat damage to a player, and you do prevent all the damage, and you make that many 1/1s. So if you prevent 20 damage, you get 21 ones. But at that point, you might just want to deal with the 20 damage to the player. I don't know how you balance this, but I kind of like it. It seems like it could be a pretty fun commander. I'm gonna put this, I think here. I think in the fun tier. I don't know, it just gets the brewing juices going of like why would you want a whole bunch of Phyrexian Mites? And it could be good with like some of the Phyrexian commanders we've talked about, or like an Orzhov artifact deck because they are artifact tokens. So that's kind of cool. Or like a token commander deck where, because you don't have to hit them with a bunch of small tokens, you can try to hit them with like Merit Lodge, which is a token, right? So you can hit them with like a 20/20 Merit Lodge and say, oh, I'm not going to kill you. Instead, I'm going to make 21/1 toxic creatures. Next up is Rodolph Duskbringer. Rodolph, 6 mana 4/4 Vampire Angel, flying Death Touch Lifelink. Whenever you gain life, it gains indestructible until end of turn. At the beginning of your end step, you may pay 1 in an Orzhov hybrid. When you do, return target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X the amount of life you gained this turn. It's a life gain commander that you pay 2 mana and bring stuff back. Seems fine. I'm gonna put in kind of fun. Like, life gain is fun, don't get me wrong, but that commander is just, you reanimate stuff, which isn't bad, but I think there are just more interesting ones out there. Next up is Selena Dark Angel. This is a 5 mana 3/3. I'm assuming it's an angel from Tempest. Has flying, it counts as an angel. See? Pay 2 life, return it to its owner's hand. So I feel like I've seen some actually really bizarre decks with this, and I don't remember what it is they do or why you like them, like why you would want to build it. However, I kind of want to put this in not fun, but I feel like there's a reason why people build it. I'm going to put it in not fun, and I'm going to have the comments tell me why I'm wrong, and then never change my opinion. I like that idea. Next up is Chandrix Silverquill. It's a 5 mana 2/5 Elder Dragon flying double strike. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may choose 2. Each mode must target a different player. Target player makes a 2/1 black and white Inkling creature token with flying. Target player draws a card, loses a life. Target player puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature they control. I had this card, and I don't know what happened to it. I might have sold it because I pre-ordered it, or it's sitting in a box. I gotta go look for that after recording this. I want to put this in Ratadrabic. I like that you kind of just prevent one player from getting any value. It's a little mean. And you give basically you give them the least beneficial thing, right? They don't have to get benefit from it. So if someone doesn't have any creatures, you can say you get counters. If someone has a bunch of cards in hand, if someone has like 8 or 9 cards, what's giving them 1 more I don't think really matters. So you get that political control. It is at the beginning of combat, so you gotta play this and immediately have an effect. And a 2/5 double striker in the air is like pretty impressive. I'm gonna put that in fun. I think I like it a little more than the taxing commanders. I wish we had more Inkling support, like true Inkling support. I think it's a cool creature type. Next up is Shay Cormac. It's a 2 mana 1/1 human knight rogue. You may pay 1 generic. Permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible, protection, shroud, and ward until end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes the target of a spell or ability you control, put a bounty counter on that creature. Whenever a creature with a bounty counter on it dies, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Shay. Alright, so you get to remove all these protections from creatures, which I think is actually pretty fun, especially for 1 mana. But it's that, and then you also whenever they become the target of a spell or ability, you put a counter on it, and then when it dies, you get counters on shit. So when you go to remove a creature, this ability triggers, you get a bounty counter, and then it presumably dies. It does suck. It doesn't say dies or gets exiled, because swords, path, anguish unmaking, and stuff don't give you the benefit, but I guess that would be pretty busted if you can just like ephemerate stuff and grow this. But then if you're ephemerating other people's creatures, you're probably giving them benefit. And I think ephemerate is only creatures you control anyways. Point is, I wish it said also, but I'm sure there'd be ways to break that. So I'm gonna put this just in the tail end of fun. I don't remember where I put this in my original Assassin's Creed video. Maybe go back and tell me if I've changed my mind, but fun and into fun it goes. Next up is Shilgengar, Seraph Famine, 5 mana 6/6 Elder Demon with flying. You sack another creature, you make a blood. If you sack an angel this way, you create a number of blood tokens equal to its toughness instead, and you can pay 3 Orzhov hybrid, so triple white, triple black, white 2 black, black 2 white, sack 6 bloods, return each creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Those creatures are vampires in addition to their other types. So the vampire text, don't really care about that, and the angel text in the first line, or first ability, kind of care, but not really. This is a really fun blink commander. I have a video on the channel, which you should definitely check out after watching this, where the idea is you play a bunch of creatures with ETBs, you sack all of them, you get them back with Shilgengar's ability, and then you blink them all, and you remove the finality counters. My friend built the deck from bulk he had laying around. It is a surprisingly powerful deck, even with just like jank stuff laying around. And also Mirror is really good in the deck because you can pay, if you pay like 2 into its X ability, all your creatures become 2/2s. However, they become angels. So you can double up your blood. For 2 mana, 3 mana, you get a triple your blood and like so on. This is going right into very fun. Right at the top end of very fun. It's not quite one to build because my friend has the deck and I can just kind of play it. But if you're looking for an interesting like blink commander, Shilgengar is definitely a really cool option. Next up is Sworn of House Markov, 2 mana 1/4 human noble with lifelink extort. And at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, exile Sorin, then return him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control, and he becomes Sorin Ravenous Neonate. It's a planeswalker that also has extort, 3 loyalty, +2 make a food, -1 it deals damage equal to the amount of life you gain this turn to any target, -6 gain control of another target, gain control of target creature. It becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. Put a lifelink counter on it if you control a white permanent other than that creature or Sorin. So its ult isn't really that impactful. You get to steal 1 creature for 6. I don't really care about that. It does get hit pretty quick. It's a +2. Sorry, had to clear my throat there. Its +2 is make a food, which is really good, but its -1 is what we care about, where you can gain a whole bunch of life and then just ping a target down. And it's a 2 mana commander, right? So 2 mana 1/4 with extort. So this is super easy to get out on turn 2. If you have a really good start with some sort of either like Jeweled Lotus or something, you can get this out turn 1. But I think getting this out on turn 2 is more than fine. And then if you have some Soul Sisters or some ways just to trigger the extort a whole bunch, it's an absolute powerhouse. I almost want to build this, but I think I'm going to put this in very fun. I like Asterion and Sorin together in like the same deck. I think those would be really good together for obvious reasons. And also not like that, you perverts. All right, next up is Teysa Karlov, 4 mana 2/4 human advisor. If a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Creature tokens you control have influence and lifelink. I don't know why I thought this Teysa gave creatures afterlife, or this had afterlife. I thought this Teysa had afterlife originally. Am I crazy? Or is that new Teysa? Hold on. Am I getting Mandela effect in here? Hold on. We're looking this up. I swear she had afterlife before. Oh, she didn't. I am just a crazy person. Anyway, sorry about that. This commander is really fun. I have in the 99 of a deck. This is going right into very fun for me. I'm going to put this, I think, like above Elenda. It's a Death Harmonicon, which is great. Creature tokens have vigilance and lifelink. I don't really care about that part. It is really good in Ratadrabic, though, because it gives your tokens lifelink, because Rabbit already gives zombie token vigilance. I mean, I guess you make other tokens in that deck, so it's nice that you, like, if you make vampires with a Lenda or something, but point is, I like this commander. It's very fun. I like doubling up on triggers. So yeah. Next up is Teysa, Envoy of Ghosts. 7 mana 4/4 at Human Advisor. Vigilance pro creatures. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, destroy that creature and make a 1/1 black and white spirit creature token with flying. 7 mana commander. I don't think it's actually that fun of a commander, so I'm gonna put this in kind of fun. I think as in the 99 of a deck, like Yannette Cryptic Sovereign, which lets you cheat odd things into play, this card's an absolute powerhouse. And like in Reanimator, I think it's really good. But in terms of its own commander, it's a 7 mana commander that just gets swords and like removed like really easily and doesn't provide that much value. But in the 99, it's just a cool like value piece. Next up is Teysa Opulent Oligarch. 3 mana, 2/3 Human Advisor with Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, investigate for each opponent who lost life this turn. So you can investigate up to 3 times in a normal game commander. And whenever a clue you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you make a 1/1 black and white spirit creature token with flying. This ability only triggers once each turn. So essentially, if you sack clues for their ability, it's 6 mana across 3 turns to make, or I guess it's 8 mana across 4 turns to make 4 1/1s. Not great value. If you have other ways of sacking clues, though, it doesn't matter if it's with its ability or something like KCI or Arcbound Ravager, you can then get more spirits. I don't think you'd want to play Arcbound or KCI necessarily in this deck. I'm trying to think where I would have put this, because I definitely did a ranking for MKM. I think I'm going to put this, I think it's going to be solidly in the fun tier. Maybe like here. Oh, I did it again. I'm getting used to this new format. We're just going to pretend that I did it right the first time. See, right here. There we go. Right in the fun tier. I like cracking clues to draw cards. It's spirits, you investigate. I don't think it's that powerful, but I think it could be a fun commander. I don't know. I'm putting it in fun. You know what? Bite me. Next up is Teysa Orzhov Scion. 3 mana, 2/3 Human Advisor. Sack 3 white creatures, exile target creature. Whenever another black creature you control dies, you make a white spirit creature token with flying. A 1/1. Okay, so you need black creatures to die to make 1/1s, and you need white creatures to sack to exile another creature. I think this is going in kind of fun, honestly. I don't know. I think maybe a little bit above that. I don't know what to do with this. Like, it's an Aristocrats deck. I guess you could try like a multicolored Aristocrats deck where you're sacrificing black and white creatures. So if you have like Orzhov creatures, you can sack 3 of those, exile someone's creature, and then get 3 1/1s. So I guess that's cool. If you have other Teysa in the deck, you can get 2 1/1 white spirits. If you have Painter Servant, I don't know if Painter Servant works with this how I want, but yeah, I think it's going to be kind of fun. Next up is Thalis Reverent Medium. This is a 5 mana, 3/4 human cleric. At the beginning of each end step, you create X 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying, where X number of tokens you created this turn. This commander is going in very fun. I actually had this commander before. It was incredibly powerful. I don't know if if the screen cap actually caught it, but I did say I'm putting it in very fun. So we're just gonna do that one more time just to make sure everyone saw it. Because how I edit these videos, I kind of cut out all the blank audio. A little editor's trick there. But anyways, this commander is incredibly fun. I've played it a lot. Smothering Tithe with it is just like gross because you make a bunch of spirits and you make a bunch of treasures. You get it's token storm is essentially what happens. But you have to make them. But again, that's not that hard to do. And I like that it's each end step instead of just your end step, especially for a 5 mana commander. This card is absolutely insane. I loved this deck. It just came apart for Raditravik. Next up is Tomik, Wielder of Law. 3 mana, 2/4 Human Advisor. Has affinity for Planeswalkers. So the spell costs 1 less to cast for each Planeswalker you control. Flying and Vigilance. Whenever an opponent attacks with creatures, if 2 or more of those creatures are attacking you and or a Planeswalker you control, that opponent loses 3 life and you draw a card. So if you want to do Orzhov Planeswalkers, like I kind of want to do with Ariette, this is your commander. And now it does have to be with 2 creatures. So if they're attacking with 1 creature, you don't get anything, which is a weird restriction. I don't know if an opponent attacks with 1 or more creatures, or 1 or more of the creatures are attacking you and or Planeswalkers you control. I don't know why it's just 2 creatures. I think that's weird. However, drawing a card is cool. It doesn't prevent them from hitting the Planeswalker, unfortunately, but it does kind of like, unless they have the kill on the Planeswalker, they're probably not going to swing in when you have this out, because if you, especially like Orzhov Walkers, I think can make a lot of tokens. I'm going to put this in very fun, I think. I don't remember where I put this on my original M video, and maybe I put it in like just fun, but I have a lot of Planeswalker commander decks now, which is weird. I have 3, I think, and that's not intentional. I just really enjoy Planeswalkers. So yeah, I think this might earn a spot in my Jared Garthalion deck. Not Jared Garthalion. Yeah, my 5-color Jared Planeswalker deck. It's not a Planeswalker deck, it's a 5-color like domain deck. I like putting just fun cards in it. Next up is Triad of Fates. 4 mana, 3/3 human wizard. May pay 1 generic tap, put a fate counter on another target creature. White tap, exile that target creature that has a fate counter on it, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. You may pay a black tap, exile target creature that has a fate counter on it. Its controller draws 2 cards. Why have I never seen this commander before? So many commanders I'm seeing for the first time. It's really weird. So you can put a fate counter on a creature, and then you can exile it to draw a card. You get a way of untapping this, but Village Bellringer from Neon Dynasty lets you do that. Not Village Bellringer, Drum Bellower. Village Bellringer is another card that lets you do this. So if you can untap your creatures on each turn, you can do this like pretty effectively and just exile tokens to draw cards, or blink a creature that you control with the Oozolith, this actually gets pretty gross because the fate counter can be put on the Oozolith, and it doesn't care how a fate counter got put onto the thing, just so long as it has one. I'm gonna put this in fun. Put this next to Athreos because they're both from Theros. I think I've never seen that commander before. I'm surprised. I feel like I should have seen at least one point in the wild or a mention of it. That's a cool card. I like that. Next up is Tymna the Weaver, 3 mana 2/2 human cleric with lifelink. At the beginning of your post-combat main phase, which I think is now your second main phase. I think this has been one of the cards that has that weird errata. You may pay X life, where X the number of opponents that were dealt combat damage this turn. If you do, you draw X cards. You deal 5 to opponents, you can drain yourself for 5, and you may pay 5 life rather, and then draw 5 cards. Also as partner, you don't care about just partners here. As a commander just on its own, I think it's powerful, and I think it is fun. I think drawing cards is like a cool thing to do. I know, I just enjoy drawing cards, and you pay life for it. As a partner, I know it's like one of the stronger partners. I think Tymna, well, I think it used to be Tymna and Tana, like a 4-color Blood Pod deck, but I don't know if it's that like viable anymore. I think it's just gotten a little too fast. But I'm not a CDH player, so let me know in the comments. Next up is Varrock the Warped Singer, 3 mana 2/2 vampire, flying Death Touch lifelink. Whenever you activate an ability that isn't a mana ability, if life was paid to activate it, you may pay that much life again. If you do copy that ability, you may choose new targets for the copy. So this was in the Dominaria United Precon, and I like this because you can, if you have fetch lands, you can copy your fetch land triggers because you pay life to activate it. I want to look at this commander or this card more for Ratadrabic, but as a commander, I think it's actually really cool. It's a Panharmonicon for activated abilities so long as you're paying life to activate it. And you have to pay that life again, so it's not just free value, which I like that they did. I think otherwise it might be a little too strong, especially if you pay something like Phyrexian Processor, where you can pay a whole bunch of life to, although I think that's a triggered ability. How does Phyrexian Processor read? Oh no, so Phyrexian Processor it enters and you pay a bunch of life, so it doesn't work with Phyrexian Processor. But I'm gonna put this in the very fun tier of commanders. I think there are enough ways you can cheat life into play. Not cheat life into play, what am I saying? I'm so tired. Where you can activate life for an ability and doubling up on that's gonna be really good. Next up is Vishkal Blood Arbiter, 7 mana 5/5 vampire flying lifelink. Sacrifice a creature, put +1/+1 counters on Vishkal, where X is this activator's power. Remove all the counters from Vishkal. Target creature gets -X/-X until end of turn. For each +1/+1 counter, remove this way. It's a 7 mana sack commander. I think Shield Gengar is more interesting than this. I think a lot of commanders are more interesting than this. You get to gain a whole bunch of life with lifelink, and you get to potentially remove a creature, but you have to remove all the counters. You can't remove some of them once per turn. Like, I think it's just a little too narrow. And for that, I think I'm going to put it in kind of fun. Yeah, I think it's going to go into the kind of fun, like right in the middle here. Next up is Vito, Fanatic of Aklazot, 4 mana, 4/4 vampire demon with flying. Whenever you sack another permanent, you gain 2 life. If this is the first time this ability is resolved this turn. If it's the second time, each opponent loses 2 life. If it's the third time, create a 4/3 white and black vampire demon creature token with flying. So you only get 3 triggers with this if you sack a permanent, is how I'm reading that. Honestly, I think this could be a cool sack commander. The goal is to sack 3 creatures a turn instead of just as many as you can, and it doesn't matter on whose turn you're doing it, so you could try to get like 4/3 vampire demons with flying. I think I'm going to put this, it is kind of a vampires, it's not really a vampires deck, it's definitely a sacrifice deck. I'm going to put it, I think, like here in between Thalise and the Spirit King. Okay, we're running out of space. Next up is Vona, Butcher of Magan, 5 mana 4/4 vampire knight, vigilance lifelink, tap, pay 7 life, destroy target non-land permanent, activate only during your turn. See, you can pay life and you can double up a trigger. No, but in all honesty, I think this is a fine commander. I think it's kind of fun. You get to like blow stuff up, which is cool, I guess. We'll put it like here. Oops. You gotta blow stuff up. Vigilance lifelink is nice. House Unlimited, back in Ixalan Limited, because it's a 5 mana 4/4 vigilance lifelink that you can then just like blow anything up whenever you need. I don't know, it feels pretty good. Next up is Warnog Rider's Captain, 2 mana 1/2 human. When it enters or leaves, each opponent may investigate. Each opponent who doesn't loses 1 life. Then you investigate X times, where X is 1 plus the number of opponents who have investigated this way. It has Friends Forever, which is that partner with from the secret layer for Stranger Things. I don't remember which one this is the in-use copy of. I'm not going to look it up. Feel free to. You investigate a whole bunch. By itself, I think actually it's fine. I don't know if I'd consider that like super fun, but it's when it enters or leaves. So if you blink it, you can force your opponents to investigate. If they don't want to give you a treasure, they lose a life, which isn't like a ton. So they probably don't, and you get like a clue, but that seems fine. I'm going to put them, I don't know where I want to put them. Maybe the tail end of fun. Maybe like up here. I don't think they're kind of, maybe by themselves actually. Yeah, I think that would have been kind of fun, I think, for themselves. You can Lurrus Companion it again, so if you want to do Lurrus stuff, there are a lot more options now. And finally, we have Zoraline Cosmos Collar. 3 mana 3/3 Bat Cleric, Vigilance Lifelink. Whenever a bat you control attacks, you gain 1 life. And whenever Zoraline enters or attacks, you may pay a white and a black and 2 life. When you do, return target non-land permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So, interesting rules thing about Zoraline if you're watching this far in the video and haven't skipped ahead. Zoraline's trigger is a delayed trigger, I think is what it's called. So when you attack, its ability goes on the stack. If Zoraline gets removed for any reason and sent to your graveyard, you can then choose to pay white and a black and 2 life and return it to the battlefield with its own ability. So that's a neat thing you can do with this. So you can attack, sacrifice it, and then just bring it back with a finality counter on it. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you absolutely can. Maybe if it's going to get exiled and you have a sack outlet, but point is, also you can do that, just be aware. Also, it's a Bat Matters commander. Bloomburrow has a ton of bats in it. Flying Vigilance is good, you gain life, and it's whenever a bat you control attacks, so it can be multiple bats, you gain multiple life. If you have a card like Conspiracy, or is it just Conspiracy? I feel like there's another one in black. No, I think it's just Conspiracy. You can make all of your creatures bats. Whenever you attack with anything, you gain life, which is cool with like Inkling tokens. It is a Kindred deck, but it's bats, which is a little bit more interesting. So I'm gonna put it above parties. I'm gonna put it like right here in the fun tier, top 5 fun. And that wraps up the Orzhov fun ranking. I'll have a link to this tier list in the video description if you want to check that out. These take a little bit to make just because of how long it takes to record. I try to do these in one shots. I don't really edit the audio, so I really appreciate you sticking around all the way. Don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what your favorite Orzhov commander is. Alrighty, nerds. I'll see you in the next one as we start covering some Duskmourn stuff.